All right, so we're going to watch this RFK video about how he overcame drug addiction. And this is a shorter version. We might get into some of the older versions or longer versions. So here it is.
I started taking drugs soon after my dad's death. I started when I was 15 years old. I didn't like being an addict. I wanted to stop. And that's when I picked up this book called Synchronicity by Carl Jung. Jung was a disciple of Freud's, and they were kind of the co-fathers of modern psychiatry. Jung says people who believe in God get better faster, and that the recovery is more durable than people who do not. And so I just said there's a God up there watching me 24 hours a day, and that life is just a series of tests. And every day is broken to about 40 different decisions. And I invested each one of those decisions with a moral dimension. For example, when the alarm goes off in the morning, do I stay in bed with my indolent thoughts, or do I jump right out of bed and get the day going? Do I hang up the towels after I get out of my shower? Or do I say, that's somebody else's job, I'm too busy for that, I'm too important for that? But 6 weeks after I got sober, my life began to get big quickly. And I was running through National Airport, and I was late for a plane, and it was mission critical. I had to be on that plane. And as I was running, I was putting a stick of Dentyne in my mouth. And I pulled up the wrapper, and I was running past a trash can, and I threw the wrapper, and it made a perfect arc right swish into the middle of the trash can. But as I was running past, I saw it must have hit something in there, and it bounced back out. And I said to myself, well, that's God's fault, because I made the shot. And maybe 40, 50, 60 steps later, it just started eating at me. And I finally put the brakes on, and I went back and put the wrapper in. I did make the plane. But for me, probably the most important thing I did that day was to put that wrapper back in that trash can, because staying in that posture of surrender, even when the cash and prize are flowing into your life, is the hard part, because my inclination is to say, thanks God, I got it from here, and then take the wheel and drive the car off the cliff again. And the challenge is, for somebody like me, it's how do you stay in that posture of surrender? What I find is when I do the little things right, that God takes care of the big things. Addiction is about ultimately abusing power. And we're all given certain powers. You have the power to make people laugh. People have education, they have connections, they have money, whatever the power is. The challenge, even as the power amplifies, is how do we make sure it's not being deployed to serve selfish ends, but it's, being deployed for some higher purpose. If you like this video...
Dang. I mean, that's a good point.
Really good point.
Yeah,
really
I never looked at it as a misuse of power, because we're given certain power, and we're squandering it with some type of selfish entitlement.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I like how he put, it's the little things, like take care of the little things and God will take care of the bigger things.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
It's a really great mentality.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense, because the way he was thinking is like, these little things someone else should be doing. I shouldn't have to do that. That's, I feel like we all struggle with that in our own way. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like the maid for someone at a house, and they were like, this person gets so upset if the doorbell rings and you don't, or this maid doesn't answer it immediately, because the person who lives there, who owns the house, thinks that she shouldn't have to answer her own door. She's paying somebody to be the maid, the housekeeper. Like, I should never have to answer my own door. That's an interesting, like, I've never gotten to that position. I've never had a housemaid, a housekeeper to even consider that. But like, I'm pretty sure I would at some point if I had a housekeeper, and I'm like, I hear that doorbell ring again. I'm like, what? Come on now. Like, you should be, you know what I mean? And I know that, like, if I were in that position, I'd have to be checking myself constantly. I'd be like, oh, dude, all right, then go get it. She's doing something else. Go get it. right?
Yeah.
Or it's just going to, fester.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, maybe this is relatable or equatable, but when I'm at the office, I'm in my office and the phone keeps ringing, I'm like, okay, where's the front desk girl? Where's the receptionist?
Right.
Why? I don't feel like picking up the phone right now, but it keeps ringing. So again, it's like keeping yourself in check and picking up the phone. Hi, thanks for calling. Come back here. This is Brett.
Right. Oh, did I get the CEO?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you did, because so-and-so wasn't picking up.
Yeah. But I soon walk out there and see like what she's doing and make sure she's in line. So
right, exactly.
But, yeah.
So what's funny is he talks about his addiction a lot, and then he also he got called out. So you ever seen Vlad TV?
I've heard of it.
Junior Vlad TV. So Vlad TV is like, I've never seen this guy's face, but he interviews people, and he's a pretty bold interviewer. Like he corners people, kind of ambushes you. There's a real good clip where he ambushes Grant Cardone.
Nice.
I think on Scientology or something like that. And you know how Grant Cardone is like, Grant Cardone's never wrong.
Absolutely not.
This guy, it's amazing to watch. I mean, never be wrong.
He's addicted to being right, basically.
Yeah, he is. But he kind of corners him and asks him about his ex-wife ending her life over finding a journal, a diary that he had about the women that he was sleeping with. And he tried to corner him, but it wasn't, he had the facts wrong. But RFK just kind of went with it, and is a really good example of even when you're trying, somebody's trying to get you, just being like, hey, actually, it was like this and blah, blah, blah. So I want to play that one. That's pretty good. All right, let's see here.
Okay, so you sobered up, you passed the bar, and that's when you started your whole environmental enforcement lawsuit and, what basically carried you on for many decades.
Yeah.
What really was the motivation to really go after people that were ruining the environment?
Well, I always, first of all, I was always an outdoors person. And that, my father raised us. We were doing whitewater kayaking on the biggest, rivers in the country from when we were really young. And this was a time when people, normal people were not doing whitewater. It was before it became kind of, something that people do on weekends. It was a commitment. And, I was fishing from when I was a little kid.
Actually, let's fast forward here.
You go, you can go on and on with that, and probably the biggest, problem in the Black community is, chronic disease and toxins that are poisoning this generation of kids, including 44% of Black children in urban areas have dangerous levels of lead in their blood. They're getting mercury toxicity. It lowers IQ, and it destroys your executive function, your capacity to regulate your own behavior. A lot of these toxins make kids ADD and ADHD, and they have a lot of other damaging impacts.
Well, in 1994, you married Mary Kathleen Richardson. You guys had 4 kids together. In 2010, you guys got divorced. In 2012, she ended up committing suicide. According to reports, it said that she had found a personal journal of yours where you had written down various encounters, sexual encounters with 37 different women. And that possibly triggered her to take her own life. Would you care to comment on that at all?
Yeah. So, it's hard. First of all,
I'm sorry for your loss, by the way. This is your mother, your kid's mother.
RFK was like, yeah, sure.
I'll add that in there real quick.
Yeah. Just so I don't come off like an asshole.
Yeah, I mean, I was not divorced at the time, by the way. I filed for divorce in 2012, but, Mary was having a hard time. And I actually, in 2014, when she took her own life, I found her and I cut her down. She had hanged herself in our.
You actually found her like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was heartbreaking. And, I had a lot of my children at that time were very vulnerable, and they had been through 5 years of very, very difficult times. And Mary was an amazing woman, and she was a very, very good mother to them. But her mental condition began deteriorating, in those last years. And those kids experienced a lot of that. And, all of those kids, I think, were at risk at that time. They've all turned into amazing, amazing kids. They're all they all do well in school and colleges. They have wonderful friendships. They have wonderful relationships. And they've excelled in their lives, which is a miracle. And I'm very grateful to my wife, Cheryl, who became a mother to them. Just so that, I would say this in all cases, that people who are healthy and have a strong, who are strong emotionally, no matter what other people do to them or what other people's behaviors, they don't take their own lives. And I'm sure many of the things that I did hurt Mary in different ways, but people take their lives for complex reasons and because of mental illness. One of the in the program that I'm in, the journal that you're talking about is called Your Fifth Step.
Oh, so it's part of the drug treatment journal?
It was part of my, my recovery. And
I was wondering why someone would write this down.
Well, I didn't write. It also was, there weren't like names of people and all of those. They, in the way that the newspapers reported that to make it look like, it was keeping kind of a, notches on the trigger. That's right. Not what it was. It was my own, way of trying to live and examine life and struggling with an issue that I was struggling with at that time. And I kept that fifth step in a safe. And somehow in the place where she was, she put a lot of effort into getting that safe open and then handing that to her sisters with instruction that if anything happened to her, it should be published in the press. And then shortly after that, she took her own life. Oh, it's a tragedy for, I take responsibility for my own conduct. But it was part of a long history of difficulty.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, man.
Yeah.
But you saw him try to ambush him with that.
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy how these interviews like spin it, and
right.
But again, he was journaling. It's part of the 12-step program of, being in recovery, the fifth step, one of the most critical steps that everybody's always working on. And, talk about just some really secret / sacred information that shouldn't have been in the hands of anybody. So,
yeah. And what he said about, why people commit, off themselves is pretty true. It's like, mentally healthy people don't do that. Someone who is battling with mental illness will, right? But nobody healthy will do that. And, somebody could look at that as like, oh, he's just making an excuse to get, to not feel guilt or anything, but that's just a fact. You know what I mean? And I think, I haven't dealt with that, anybody in my family offing themselves. But at the end of the day, I think once you go through it, then you realize, oh, yeah, there was, there's nothing that you could do to prevent this person from pursuing this action,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a rough one, man.
And he found her too, man.
Yeah, had to cut her down. Man.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So
yeah. I was thinking the other day, I was watching this interview with a ex-Army Ranger on the Sean Ryan podcast.
okay.
And he's an ex-Navy SEAL, I think, and he interviews a lot of military guys. And this guy was just talking about like everything he went through with war, and I'm like, dang, like that's an experience I'll never understand, you know. And I value, you know, people going through really hard times and like, you know, experiencing that and then finding a way through it, because you know there's a wisdom and an understanding of things that you can't have unless you experience tough times like that. And like war is one of those. And, you know, it's almost like I felt like, dang, I wish I had that story in a way to understand that experience. But like, oof, that's a depth of pain and yeah, that's a experience that, on the outside, you're like, okay, cool, yeah, I could take that combat experience, but then you're like, oh man, but then it's every day. Like that Ranger, he was saying, was like, every day I think about those guys dead, you know, and then you're like, oh yeah, that is part of it. You're thinking about it every day, because like RFK, he's probably thinking about that image. Like when that guy asked him the question about his ex-wife, you know, that image of finding her hanging popped into his head immediately.
Yep.
How does it not, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you grow from that and you learn another level of like living with someone with mental illness. Like, yeah, you can't control what they're going to do, but then you also you have that memory every day, and it eats at you. But isn't it interesting though? Like when you see like people experience like really hard times, there's like, most of them find God, if they haven't already.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
What is that? Yeah, what is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because you and I have always had a relationship with God in our life, you know, different throughout the decades of our life and the, you know, different, you know, timelines or parts of our life, but. Yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, at least what they say is like they're trying to carry this burden on their own, you know, and then they give it up to God, and I don't know, man. I was thinking about this today, like, what does that mean? Because I've never not had a relationship with God that helped me deal with hard times, you know, or, you know, tough experiences. And so for someone to live so much of their life and then finally hit that wall with an experience, they're like, I can't deal with this on my own. I have to give it up. I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And I feel like also what I see sometimes when like people find God or whatever, sometimes I feel like it can be used as like a crutch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they say they find God, but they miss the whole meaning behind it.
Right. 100%. I think we watched Andy Elliott talk about that. Yeah. Yeah. I would like to sit down with Andy and ask him, what does that mean to you? What does that giving it up to God, what does that mean to you? Does that mean like responsibility or shame? You give it up and like so that you don't have to feel it anymore?
Right.
I don't, you know, like there's a healthy level of shame and guilt that you should have, right? Don't you think?
I think so.
Yeah, because then
I think so.
if you don't have it, then it's like, you know, there's no need to grow.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Yeah. Interesting. But yeah, RFK, man, he that's a rough geez, talk about like being addicted to drugs for so long, decades of his life.
Wild.
And then have his wife
Heroin.
Yeah, dude, what a number, right?
Yeah, and then also it's like he's in this like prestigious family. So like what was he like, trying to escape? Which again, addiction I feel like has many different faces, can affect anybody, but it's like what was he trying to escape? Is it like living up to the expectations of like that Kennedy family name?
Yeah.
Is it the loss of his father?
I mean, probably all the above, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. He goes, RFK Jr. names second shooter who killed his father, doing drugs after father's murder, and he gets caught with heroin. Let's see this one.
Well, after that situation, you were expelled from 2 different boarding schools for using drugs. Did the drug use start after your dad died?
One of them was for a lady friend that I had.
Okay.
But I'm not saying I wasn't doing drugs at the time, but it was, I started doing drugs after my dad died.
Okay, to try to cope with the loss?
Oh, who knows? I mean, I feel honestly that I was born an addict, and that, I would have, no matter what happened, I probably would have gone that way. But who knows? There's no way to reconstruct that. But I feel like a lot of the things that I had ADHD when I was a kid, and that I had a big empty hole inside of myself. And that, I couldn't focus, I couldn't concentrate. The minute I started taking drugs, I became calm and I was able to focus, and I actually started doing really well in school. I think I was medicating various issues that I had. And, and if the medication still worked, I'd still be doing it. After, you do it for a while, particularly I was using heroin, it turns on you, and, it works for a while. It solves all your problems for a little while.
Right.
And then, it's like dancing with a gorilla. You figure out that you're not stopping until the gorilla gets tired of it.
I've never heard that before. That's a good comparison. That next year, your grandfather dies.
Yeah, my grandfather had a stroke in 1962.
Oh, okay. So
he was disabled after that, and really never talked again. He never had a normal conversation. He could only grunt.
Okay, so it took, you had already prepared yourself for that over the course of 7 years. Yeah. Okay. Well, after getting kicked out of a couple of schools, you end up getting into Harvard.
Yeah.
Most people who get expelled from schools don't get into Harvard. Can you explain how you accomplished that?
I was a top student in my class for the last 2 years of school. And, I had a good academic record. That's one reason I'm sure that, Harvard looked at the fact that my dad had been a presidential candidate, that, I had generations.
Always helps.
That
really helps.
My grandfather.
My last name's Kennedy.
Yeah.
My father had been to Harvard. My uncle had been to Harvard. And so, they favor legacies, but, so I would say there are a lot of factors, and it was a lot easier to get into Harvard back then than it is right now.
Yeah. Okay. So you go to Harvard, you graduate with a bachelor's in American history and literature. Then you go to London School of Economics, and then you go to Virginia Law School, where you get your law degree, and then a master's of law from Pace University. So you really take the whole school thing very seriously moving forward. At one point, didn't you have problems passing the bar?
Yeah, I failed the bar by 1 point.
Okay.
And I got 659 out of 660, but they didn't say that in the newspaper articles. They just said, idiot, flunks bar. it's anyway, that's one of the downsides of celebrity.
Okay.
And by the way, I was a heroin addict at that point.
Well, right, because in 1983, when you were 29 years old, you were charged with heroin possession.
Yeah.
Was that a turning point? Because now it's out in the public, and you're a Kennedy, and
yeah. I mean, one of the problems I had, Vlad, was, there was because of the strictures that I'd grown up in, that anytime anything bad, you tell anything bad, it's going to. You tell anybody any secrets about yourself, it's going to get in the press. So the idea of going into a 12-step meeting and start being truthful to people was, I just as soon go, swim to the bottom of the ocean and, try to breathe. I just wouldn't do it. So, but all of a sudden, everybody knew I was a drug addict. And it gave me the freedom to actually get help. And, I immediately, I'd say I immediately had a spiritual realignment, because I was able to go in and be honest for the first time in my life. It wasn't just not having to do drugs, but it was not having to lie anymore and to hide things, that I could just be, who I was and be honest.
Well, right. You got 2 years probation and community service, and you went into a drug treatment center, like you mentioned. Was that the point that you kicked drugs?
Yeah.
A lot of people try to kick, though, and then they come back. They come back to it. Situations happen. What do you think was the secret to you actually kicking drugs so long ago and not going back?
Because I came into the 12-step program and I gave up control. I didn't, they say in 12-step programs, they say half measures avail us nothing, which seems unfair, because half measures should avail us half. Right? But if you don't completely commit to it, if you commit 100%, it's guaranteed to work. And I committed 100%. I said, whatever I need to do to get sober, I'm going to do. And I was so done with I didn't like it. For 14 years, I've been trying to quit. Oh, I started doing, shooting heroin when I was 15 years old. And,
damn.
But I always was trying to quit. I was always doing it without my own permission. I was always doing it, again, I knew I was living against conscience. I knew that this is not what I wanted to do with my life. And the weird thing is, I had iron willpower in every other area of my life. Like, I gave up candy for Lent when I was 14, and I never ate candy again until I was in college. I gave up desserts about the same time. And I never ate a dessert again until I was a freshman in college. I was playing sports. I was playing rugby, and I was trying to bulk up, and I started eating desserts again. But I felt like I could do anything with my willpower. But this compulsion was impervious to will. I would tell myself at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm never going to do that again. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd be doing it. And, it was to me, the most demoralizing feature of addiction, of the disease, was my incapacity to keep contract with myself. I was baffled and completely demoralized by it. So when I finally got the opportunity to be sober, I just said, whatever I need to do to make this work, I'm going to do. And I did. That's what I did. And my desire for drugs and alcohol was just lifted. And it was as if I had never been a drug addict. It was a miracle. It was as big a miracle to me as if I'd been suddenly able to walk on water.
Congratulations. Heroin is one of the worst drugs from everyone I've talked to. And that's the hardest one to kick. So congrats on actually kicking it for that long.
Yeah, I'd rather be addicted to heroin than crack cocaine if we want to get into the weeds. Okay.
Fair enough.
Dang. Have you ever dealt with anybody with crack cocaine compared to heroin at your facility?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, we don't really see a lot of we don't see heroin. It's fentanyl,
Okay.
and typically you know, the crack addicts that come in, there's fentanyl in the crack.
Right.
There's basically fentanyl in everything.
Jeez.
Yeah, but yeah, a lot of crack, a lot of fentanyl, and xylazine, which is a horse tranquilizer.
Hmm. But it's sold
So
on the
what's
street.
sold on the street.
Wow. And those are pretty rough situations.
Yeah, especially the xylazine because there's so many side effects. Causes like flesh eating infections. And, I mean,
Wow, like
yeah,
a
it's
staff?
because yeah, basically,
Wow.
yeah, where they inject it. I mean, it'll eat away at the flesh,
Dang.
but they just keep injecting it.
Wow.
So,
That's rough.
yep,
Dang. I didn't know about that. Now, is it the xylazine? How do you pronounce it again?
xylazine.
Xylazine. Is it the xylazine that causes the infection?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's not just the needle.
Yeah,
It's the drug.
it's the drug. Yeah,
Mm.
I don't know all the details, but yeah,
Yeah. And it's a tranquilizer, right? So it's like a numbing effect, right? Kind of like heroin, is that right?
yeah, yeah. It's a downer. Any you know, opioids are downers, and crack or cocaine is a stimulant, an upper.
Right. What does the fentanyl do?
I mean, it's an opioid. It's a synthetic opioid, so it's a downer. I
Oh,
mean,
so it's a
it's a
downer.
lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper than heroin, and it's like I don't know, 100,000 times stronger than heroin. Just a very little bit gets you high.
Mm. Dang. Like 100 times stronger.
Something ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could see how somebody, and it's cheaper.
it's cheaper, and they put it in anything. They put it in crack. They weed, amphetamines,
Yeah.
just to make the whatever compound you think you're getting a lot better and get you higher.
Right. That makes sense.
Just like a lot of people that come in, their drug of choice is crack cocaine. We do a urinalysis, crack shows up, and also fentanyl shows up. They're like, oh, I never used fentanyl. Well, there's fentanyl in the crack cocaine.
Right. Dang. You can't even do crack clean anymore.
No, sir.
Dang.
No, sir.
There was a. Go ahead.
And I mean, again, that's why you keep hearing about all the fentanyl overdoses, because it's so strong.
Right.
You don't know how much you're getting. You have these drug dealers that purposely put more into the capsules, and then the word gets around that, oh, Johnny overdose. Oh, that's the good stuff.
Oh.
That's the good stuff. So because again, as like an addict, you're always chasing that first high that you ever had.
Dang.
But you're never going to get there.
Right.
You're never going to get higher than the first time.
Right.
At least not with opioids or crack cocaine.
Right. That's wild, man.
But that THC, though, I mean.
Yeah, that THC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is that the same thing? Do you feel like can you get as high as you did the first time? I feel like people don't.
With THC?
Yeah, I feel like people don't get addicted to THC because of that, right?
Right.
It's just like there is a state of highness that is manageable, and then there's a state of like, whoa, I'm so high. And it's like, okay, once you get to that so high, it's the same so high every time you get so high, right? Am I wrong?
Right.
Yeah,
to some degree.
Yeah.
Some degree. Either out in the galaxy or on the moon.
Right.
Or within your own subconscious.
Right. I'm so glad that I never took like a high amount of THC like in an edible. Like I feel like that would have messed me up so bad, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a fan of edibles.
Cut this off, man. Hold on one second. Boom. Bluetooth. Yeah, dude, did I tell you that one time that I got Courtney left town, I think, for something, and I was going to go for a trail run with my dog. Did I tell you about this, dude?
No, you didn't.
And I made the mistake of taking a hit from a blunt before I left. And I don't smoke a lot, right? So I think I took 2 hits. But 2 hits to me is like a lot. Like I just 1 hit and I'm fine. I'm golden. Dude, I take the 2 hits. I get Kuna in the car, and I sit there in the car for about 10 minutes trying to figure out how to turn it on.
Wow.
And I'm like, and then right when I figured out how to turn it on, I was like, oh, I can't drive. What am I doing? It just took me 10 minutes to figure out how to turn it on. I can't do this. So Kuna's like in the back seat, like, okay, let's go. And I'm like, we got to go inside. So I bring her inside. I shut the door, and she's just sitting at the door like, we're going, right? And I'm like, I got to work this out. Like, I got to work it out. So then I just start shadow boxing. And I'm like, okay, this feels good. I'm flowing, bah, 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 bah. And then I'm like, and I'm like yelling in my apartment, da, 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 and I'm breaking a sweat, dude. I was shadow boxing for 30 minutes straight. And Kuna's just sitting at the door watching me like, what the fuck is wrong with my owner? And then I finally worked it out, and I was like, okay, cool. I can drive now. And then
let's go for this hike.
Yeah, I threw her back in the car, and we drove off. I was probably going like, I was in the furthest lane to the right, just going like 5 under the speed limit, just like, I'm driving so well today. Yeah, I'm going to drive so safe today.